I think we've got those technical issues resolved. So I will start again in case we had other issues. This is the time and place for the October 2020 Board of Oil, Gas, and Mining hearing. Before we get too far down the agenda, I'd like to make sure that we have a roll call of board members. From the screen, I can see that we have Mr. Brown, Vice Chairman, Susan Davis, Stephen Church. I see Richard Borden is, at least his camera is on. I heard Gordon Moon earlier. Have I missed anyone?
This is LaVon. I'm here.
Okay, there you are. Thank you. Looks like we have a full quorum this morning. Before we get too far down the road, I will need to read the public announcement on why we're having an electronic meeting. I will do so at this time. I, Chris Hansen, Chairman of the Board of Oil, Gas, and Mining, have determined the October 28th, 2020 public meeting will be held electronically and without an anchor location. This determination is based on the following facts. 1, Utah continues to be affected by the COVID-19 global pandemic. 2, as a result of a spike of cases, the Utah Department of Health recently issued State Public Health Order 2020-17, declaring a statewide public health emergency. 3, the physical space utilized for public meetings within the Utah DNR building is insufficient to maintain effective social distancing, and the board is unable to ensure proper safety protocols are in place to guarantee safe participation to the public. 4, the board has been using an electronic platform allowing interested parties to fully participate while also allowing the public to independently view the public meeting and offer public comment. 5, under the circumstances, the electronic platform currently available is a safer alternative to face-to-face public participation. 6, this determination will expire 30 days from today's date. And 7, the board, division, and the Department of Natural Resources will evaluate the public health and safety conditions existing before the December 2020 public meeting and inform the public as to how that meeting will proceed as soon as possible. Let's all pray for a vaccine. Having accomplished that task, we will start this morning's briefing session by turning the time over to Director Baza. Mr. Baza, if you'd like to go ahead.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, and can you hear me all right now?
I can hear you, but you sound a little bit distorted.
It may be my voice.
More so than normal. No, it sounds like a microphone issue.
Okay. Testing. 1, 2, 3, 4. Am I coming through okay?
I think we can understand most of what you're saying. Go ahead, Director Baza.
Well, we'll be fairly quick on this. I know that we got a late start because of the technical issues, but we'll run through this briefing agenda pretty quickly. I'm John Baza. I'm the director for the division. And first item we have on our briefing this morning is to provide you an update on the oil and gas program's legislative audit response. About a week and a half ago, on October 19th, we presented to the legislature's Natural Resources, Ag, and Environmental Quality Appropriations Subcommittee. And you can go out to that website, the legislative website, and view the minutes of that meeting and the recording of that meeting. But we went before them because it was back in January during the general session that committee made a motion that they wanted us to report back to them by October 1st. So we sent that report in to the committee chairs and to the fiscal analysts on October 1st. And they asked us to be on the agenda for the meeting on the 19th. So Bart Kettle, our deputy director for oil and gas, and I went in front of that committee. We provided them with an overview of the report. Bart did a PowerPoint presentation, which he's ready to do for you today. The information that we provided them was that the findings of the audit have allowed us to move forward as an effective and efficient government agency. We've made a lot of progress, and a lot of it is due to our staff and the work that they've put into it. And I'm 100% behind the steps we're taking, including the work that was in progress at the time the audit was released in November of 2019. It was a busy 12 to 14 months for the program. In just a minute, I'm going to turn time over to Bart to provide you a summary of some of the valuable accomplishments that have been achieved over the past year. Before that, I'd like to again acknowledge that it's the division staff and the busy work they've been carrying out in regulating all of the division's programs and administering those programs. That's our 3 regulatory programs in oil and gas, minerals, coal, and of course our abandoned mines reclamation program. And of course, along with the day-to-day work of the division, this board has been busy conducting monthly electronic hearings and finalizing work on various rulemakings that were deemed important. Even through the challenges of the worldwide pandemic and remote working conditions, the past year has been productive, and it's due largely to the staff of the division and their dedicated efforts as state employees. So with that brief introduction, board members, I'm going to turn the time over to Bart Kettle, who will provide you with the report that he gave to the Legislative Committee.
Okay, just one moment. I'm having some trouble sharing my screen at an inopportune time, of course. Hopefully it has shared this time.
I can see it, Bart.
Yeah, we can
Okay,
see it
good.
here, Bart.
Okay, thank you. So with that in mind, as Director Baza stated earlier, within the oil and gas program, we are improving. And I would like to take just a moment also to give credit to the staff who have faced the hard decisions over the past year, who came up with kind of innovative solutions and have really provided the backbone in the form of the work to make those solutions become real. And so if there's only 3 things that each of you remember from this presentation, I hope it might be these 3 items. We are improving in our enforcement philosophy, both in how we approach enforcement and the tools we have available to us. We're bringing one of those tools before you later today in the formal hearing. We are improving in our workflow prioritization. We've presented to you prior on inspection prioritization. That's one of the items that's been a tool that's helped us improve, and it helps us make decisions. And we're changing how we do our financial management, well, in where, how, why, and when we're spending money within the program. And so I'd like to give you just a couple of insights of some of the things that we're working on currently. We currently are working on an electronic inspection form. This is something that's been implemented in the minerals side of the program, or excuse me, in the minerals program. And we're taking the efforts that they've done and creating an electronic form for the oil and gas program. It's nearing completion at this point. We're also working on a dashboard concept for internal use initially, but it'll also eventually have an outward facing component to it. And just to give each of you a little bit of insight of what it took for us to get to this point, in the past year, we've completed 15 separate technology projects to kind of build the foundation, if you will, for us to move forward. We're currently working on 9 projects, and we're in the process of planning 3 more. The workload as far as the advancements we've made is about what the program can take on in the past year, and we're fully anticipating another year with about that level of activity again. So I'm just going to briefly go over this real quickly. I know that each of you have probably seen inspection prioritization multiple times. As a high-level overview, it's a spatial-driven, a map-driven tool that we have available that also has a customizable report component to it. It depicts which oil and gas sites need an inspection on them. They're depicted by colors. Priority 1, priority to reach are obviously red. I must emphasize red doesn't mean bad. It just means an inspection's due at that site at that time. And so I want to talk about why prioritization problems are prioritization modules, and really talk about the problems that they solve for the program and how we're going to use them some moving forward. So the number one thing that prioritization modules do is they complete the repetitive work for us. Oftentimes while we're in sleep, the module is running scripts. And when we arrive at work, it's providing us information to move forward with our day. That allows our highly skilled workforce to spend more time making decisions. As just kind of a side note, the program hired 6 people this past year. As a group, they averaged 14 years of experience coming to the program. We kind of presented that to you earlier. So we have a very highly skilled staff in the program, and modules allow them to make informed decisions instead of spending the background time getting the information collected. And then they also allow the program to know how the system's operating. If we see problems, hopefully we can detect them early and find solutions to them before they really create hardships for ourselves or the industry we regulate. So with that, I just want to show just a little bit of data from the inspection prioritization module that we've already implemented. You'll see several columns in there. It obviously depicts the average time between inspections at the audit report in November of 2019, and then shows the average time between inspections in September of 2020. The line that I'd really encourage you to pay attention to is this bottom line, the overall. That's probably the most meaningful line, where we've been able to decrease the amount of time between inspections by nearly 200 days at this point. If we graph that out, which you'll see in the following slide, the graph on the left just depicts our staffing. And what I'd like you to pay attention to is the graph on the right, the average days between inspection. And so you can see that over time it's declined. There's a couple of interesting things we're starting to learn from this tool. The first is February is when we added the tool. So that's when we started to have the ability to track the data. In March to May is the time period where we added 6 staff members. And you can see in the subsequent months, May to July, we have a steep drop off in the average days between inspections. And then of course in July, we had a single staff member retire. And it kind of tells us how important each staff member is, because as that retirement occurred, you can see our average days between inspections, while it's still declining, it's at a much slower rate. So it kind of gives us a little bit of feedback of how important that single staff member was. The next thing I want to talk about is the revenue for the oil and gas program. There's 4 years worth of data there. 2018 through 2020 are actual numbers. 2021, fiscal year 2021 is estimates of what we forecast our revenues will be and our expenditures will be. And as you can see, we're forecasting that the program will operate at $1 million deficit. Now, thank you to efforts from this board, the program does have a reserve amount of money in place, and we'll be able to cover this over the next year, thanks in part to your previous efforts to help us get that in place. But if this trend continues into future years, we obviously won't be able to cover a deficit like this indefinitely. And so I think the obvious question that would come up is, well, why are we at suddenly a deficit? The first component that probably needs to be understood is the oil and gas program primarily is funded off of conservation account revenue. That is money collected from production in the state of Utah, oil and gas production. And if we look at the graph on the left, we see that over time, the conservation account revenues have declined. They certainly have peaks and valleys, and that will continue forward. But when we put a trend line in, it's consistently declining. The problem that we face as a program is depicted by the graph on the right, where we look at our well count by year, a pretty good indicator of how much the workload of the program is over time. And the trend line on that is almost exactly the opposite. It's increasing over time. One of the things that I would kind of like to emphasize as we talk about this, the program could be roughly broke down into three components: a review or a permitting component, the inspection and enforcement component, and the data collection component. And if you look at those as stools or as legs on a stool, two of those legs, the inspection and enforcement and the data management, they get more complicated and they become more work over time as our wells increase. It's been my experience that the review component also increases because of the level of sundries and various things that are also involved. And so, as I said, like we've got a increasing workload, a decreasing funding. It's something that concerns us. If I can have you pay attention really quickly to the conservation account and look at the peaks and valleys so that you kind of recall it's not consistent. Some years it's been at nearly $8 million. This year we're forecasting it to be barely over $2 million. That segues into this slide, which shows the percentage of monies into the conservation account from natural gas versus oil. And if we look at 2006, we see the majority of money being paid into the account was from the production of natural gas, 63%. We contrast that to the past year, that percentage of natural gas contributions into this account had declined to only 18%. And so if we look at it in the aspect of a portfolio, what's happened is we've become somewhat unbalanced. The program is heavily reliant on oil production to fund the program, and natural gas is providing a lower percentage. Moving on to the next slide, where that's particularly concerning, what we see as depicted on the left, natural gas production has steadily declined over time, an average of a 12% decline per year. When we look at oil production on the right, oil production has had peaks and valleys, but the main takeaway from this is increases in oil production over time have been there. They're slight, but they have not been able to offset the significant declines in gas production in the state of Utah, as far as the conservation account is concerned. So with that, I would like to talk about for a moment the value of regulation. And ideally, regulation is consistent. It allows the regulated parties and those relying on regulation for protection, predictability in the future to know what they'll be facing. As all of us here today know, there has been nothing about 2020 that has been consistent. In fact, this very briefing session was inconsistent and we had a technical difficulty at the start. It's just been the way this year has gone for many of us. In the oil and gas program, we kind of feel like we got a head start on the rest of the program when we had an audit released in November of 2019. We've taken the recommendations from that audit very seriously, and we've worked hard to implement them. We've also been diligent in trying to implement the changes that are recommended to us and the things that we need to work on in a consistent manner so that the regulated community and those relying on regulation can predict what the next step from the program is. We intend to kind of move forward with that process into the future. With that, Director Baza, that concludes my presentation today. I'd be happy to field any questions.
Thanks, Bart. I changed my feed here, and now I'm getting an echo, so that probably isn't working real well. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we can hear you fine, Director Baza.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks, Bart, and I appreciate the summary that you gave us. I just wanted to indicate to the board that we did produce a written report, and I realized too late that we have probably failed to provide that written report to the board for this meeting. So you can plan that in the next few hours, I'll be sending you an email with that same report that we provided to the committee to you as board members so that you can have that document. The other thing I'll mention is that even though the committee has had a report from us and there's no additional action needed on their part, the legislative auditor general is still intending to do a follow-up, a one-year follow-up on the audit that they published in November of last year. We have not yet had a communication from them on that follow-up, but we are anticipating that that will occur in the near future. And at least over time, they've indicated that that would require about maybe a few weeks worth of effort on our part to respond to that follow-up. So we'll let you know as that proceeds what takes place there. But with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions, and I'm sure Bart is prepared to answer any questions too.
Thank you, Director
questions,
Baza.
Mr. Chair.
You, Mike, go ahead, please.
John, if memory serves me, I thought Bart did send out that report. I might be wrong, but I thought we received that.
Let me share my screen with you real quickly, because I think what Bart may have sent out to you was a fact sheet, an update.
While you're looking for that, let me direct a question to Bart for him to be thinking about. Bart, you showed us the revenue stream and the issues. What are the top 3 expenditures or costs in the oil and gas program?
Director Baza, would you like me to answer that question, or do you want to finish what you're presenting and then I'll answer it afterwards?
Go ahead and answer the question, Bart. I've just got this screen up, so.
Yeah, our number one expenditure is our people. We're a program built off expertise in the regulatory forum. And so that's our number one expenditure is basically the salary for the expertise for the people. The number 2 expenditure that we're having right now is actually trying to get our technology upgraded to a point where it supports us and pushes us forward and gets us to the place we'd want to be. And the third item has dropped off recently due to COVID, but our number 3 expenditure is actually travel for our staff to get to the sites where they need to do some sort of administration.
Thank you.
Mr. Brown, I just wanted to point out that this is the document that we sent to the committee on October 1st. It's 16 pages. I know that Bart sent out the fact sheet, which was, I think, 3 or 4 pages long, but does this look familiar to you in terms of what I'm presenting on the screen right now?
Actually, it doesn't.
Okay.
So you're probably correct.
So I will forward this to you immediately after the briefing session today.
Thank you. I'm done, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Other board members? Seeing none, Mr. Kettle, I wanted to ask a question about the conservation fund and the method of how it's built from the gas and oil sales. I assume it's similar to a royalty payment and a percentage of the price of the commodity. But could you explain that to the group, how that conservation fund is built on oil and gas prices?
Yes, it's a 0.2% that's collected on the production the value of production from oil and gas production in the state.
So I would assume the higher the price of oil, the higher the contribution from oil sales versus natural gas. Would that be correct?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, that's correct. It's affected by both price and volume. And so in the case of natural gas, volumes are declining, but price also declined over time.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that explanation. That is the end of my questions on this topic. Seeing no other questions from the board members, Mr. Baza, I'll turn it back over to you.
All right. Well, again, thank you for the opportunity to present that to you, and we will keep you informed as we move forward with the audit follow-up. The next item on the briefing agenda is merely the board hearing schedule for year 2021. We provided that to you at the last board meeting, and this is the meeting where we would ask for the board's ratification of that hearing schedule so that it can be published and people can be aware of what the hearing schedule for 2021 is. So with that, I'll simply ask that the board take action on that as necessary.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Baza. I guess at this time, we've had an opportunity to review the board schedule going forward. Are there any questions or concerns from the board members? I think that we can assume then that the schedule is adequate and approved. Would that be appropriate, Mr. Baza?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We will move forward then with publishing that schedule for next year.
Thank you.
I do not have other items of significance on the briefing schedule this morning. Before I conclude my comments, though, I do want to take a minute for just a personal privilege, I guess, and that is to recognize that one of our board members, Ms. LaVon Garrison, it's her birthday today, so we can all wish Ms. Garrison a happy birthday and hope that things work out for you. Thanks, LaVon.
What a way to spend a birthday, huh? Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Happy birthday, LaVon.
Thank you.
Happy birthday. I don't think we'll sing for you, though. We won't torture anybody that way.
Okay. Sounds like a deal. Thank you.
I'll turn the time back to you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Director Baza, and thank you, Mr. Kettle. That was a good presentation, very informative, and I know you guys have put in a lot of time and effort to comply with the findings of the audit and improve your situation here. Again, thank you. Thank you for the hard work. At this time, normally we would take public comment, but because of the situation we are in with COVID, public comment should have been received prior to midnight last night. And I've been informed that there were no public comments submitted. Therefore, we will end the briefing session and we'll move into the hearing, the hearing matters here momentarily. If there's no objection, we'll take a 5-minute break, come back, and begin the formal hearing. So we'll take 5 minutes, be back at approximately 10:12, and we'll start then.